Good morning, I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Debra Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
Well, everybody has opinions about alcohol, from total abstinence to moderation to binging on the weekends. But once again, Gen Z appears to be leading a brand new trend. We'll ask the Morning Light panel about what it all means.
It'll be interesting to hear. But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. Ministry leaders play a very strategic role in the life, health, and growth of the local church. But who cares for the ministry leaders and their families? Well, there's a nonprofit that does just that. We will speak with the founder of Serving Leaders Ministries.
But we begin this morning with a little history lesson. 1945. Were you around then? Well, that was the end of the Holocaust. It was the death of Adolf Hitler and the defeat of Germany. It's when America dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing the end of World War II. So 1945 witnessed quite a bit of celebrating. According to a new Gallup poll, nearly 70% of Americans were drinking alcohol in 1945, and consumption has held steady ever since. Every year they take that poll. Fast forward 80 years to 2025, and we're seeing a pretty big change. The percentage of drinking Americans has plummeted. Now just over half of Americans drink, 54%. That is a record low, Deborah.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah, big change.
And according to that same poll, Americans don't seem to be replacing alcohol with marijuana or other mood-altering drugs.
Maybe a little milk. Yeah.
53% of Americans believe drinking alcohol, even in moderation, is bad for your health. And that is backed by the former Surgeon General, who issued an advisory on how alcohol increases the risk of certain cancers. But just who is leading the charge to drink less alcohol? And it may surprise you, Gen Z people born between 1997 and 2012, and that's us, right?
That's right, right in there.
Are making independent choices about health, often different from their parents.
Yeah, very different choices on a lot of things. So as Americans get drier, manufacturers now worry consumers will do to alcohol what they did with big tobacco. They'll just walk away. But is this change in the national mood linked to something more than a TikTok trend? Is there a connection between the decline of alcohol by Gen Z and a host of other changes, like more conservative politics in some cases, a return to spiritual questions and traditions, and less casual attitudes towards sex? We'll ask the Morning Light panel to help us understand this countercultural movement. We've got Michael Geer, president of the Pennsylvania Family Institute. No one better to talk about it than you. Glad to have you back. Michelle Keadle-Taylor, glad to have you. Greenlight operation, dealing with the really tough issue of human trafficking. Thanks for what you're doing. And Dave Wiedis, brand new book out. This is a beautiful cover, by the way.
Thank you.
I love the subtitle. It's The Spiritually Healthy Leader, and then the subtitle is Finding Freedom from Self-Sabotage. One of the areas that people self-sabotage is often alcohol and abuse of substances. But I want to drill down on the subset of that Gallup poll that apparently is driving this particular trend, and that's Gen Z. So as Debra said, that's 13 to 28-year-olds. They are not drinking as much as the generation before them, and they're making a lot of other choices. So answer this question. The real reason Gen Z is drinking less is what?
Wow. The real reason is that I think that they're looking for more real, genuine experiences, and that perhaps as they drink alcohol, they don't have a genuine experience, right? It becomes unreal. It's a fantasy in their mind, you know, when you get drunk, right? And so genuineness, being present, being real, is a value of Gen Zs. And I think that's probably one of the drivers. Another driver, of course, is expense, right? People don't have the money that maybe their forefathers had. The prior
Water's
generation.
cheaper.
Water's cheaper. Yeah. Although, you know, there's mocktails that people are engaging in. And maybe even it's just the idea of like having a genuine experience with friends as opposed to going out and getting drunk.
So this idea of alcohol being the ultimate social lubricant, creating conversation, they're finding perhaps that it doesn't lead to the depth of relationships, that they're expecting. But from a spiritual sense, I mean, right alongside of this, these changes in their personal habits, what time they're getting up, what time they're going to bed, the videos they're watching, the grind, all of this stuff is a real, every study shows, a real curiosity about spiritual things, and is there more to life than this? What are you seeing, especially with the young women that you're working with?
Well, even beyond that, I have 3 kids that are in this age bracket. Then, so what we're seeing, there's a trend that they really want to know what the purpose of life is, and I think everybody's born with that question, like, what is the meaning of life? Why am I here?
Yeah.
You know, when I was an atheist, I was asking that question.
Right.
But I feel like they are looking for, you know, what am I doing here? And getting on with it. And I think you're right. I think they're trying to break out of some of the norms they've seen, whether it's questioning things like, do we really have to go in the office 40 plus hours a week and do this with our life? Or is there something more meaningful we're doing? And I've seen that even with my kids, like trying to find their purpose and linking it even with God. And so the more conversations as parents that we can have and be open and authentic with them about things that our own history lessons, then it helps them to say, I don't really want to do it that way.
Right.
And also being a sounding board for them. So if something has happened, not freaking out about it, but actually allowing them to talk through it and then helping them to examine it for themselves and say, so what did you learn from this experience? Or when you're seeing this go on with your friend's house or something, is there a benefit in this or is there a danger in it?
And alcohol doesn't seem to add to that kind of approach to living.
And if you, as a parent, can stay open, or a grandparent, if you can stay open when they come to you and say, I was at this party and the dad was supplying alcohol for all these kids in high school. And I saw my friends falling on the ground and I was really worried and I didn't want to call because I thought you guys might freak out. If you could just be like, no, call. Please call. It'll be okay. And having those conversations, creating a platform for them.
Michael, this is alcohol in some ways has been for generations a rite of passage in America. It's the initiation into the business culture. It's the initiation sometimes into the high school culture. Is this in part a rejection of decisions of their parents? Is it because they've had to pick up drunk dads or drunk moms, or there's domestic violence always is linked generally to some form of substance abuse? What are your thoughts?
I think it's some of that, and you talked about, though, you know, alcohol being viewed as a social lubricant, and so when we think about the social media and what young people, especially Gen Z, are engaged in, is oftentimes tied to a screen. And so they're in front of a screen rather than with a group of friends or going out to dinner or going out to a concert or something like that. So when you're not relating to other people and all of those sorts of things, it creates less of an opportunity for you to think, let's go out and have a drink. Because you're not going out and doing anything. You're kind of stuck to your screen or scrolling or binge watching streaming services on TV.
So you think screens are in part the enemy of,
I think it, well, enemy.
of social connection?
Well, yeah, certainly. Yeah. I think that, I mean, you see it in restaurants. I mean, you see people sitting there, and they probably might not order a drink because they're sitting there and they'll just get the food.
Right.
And you know, when you talk about the pathology that comes with alcohol, I mean, my dad was addicted to cigarettes and to alcohol, basically, and ended up, you know, dying at age 68, largely pretty much drinking himself to death as a lonely man in that kind of situation. So I think young people are aware of that, and so what you mentioned certainly does play into it, the DUIs and the education that's been done over the last generation, really in terms of the dangers that comes from alcohol over abuse.
Right. Dave, your book is about healthy leaders. So what does Gen Z want from a healthy leader? What are they looking for? When they're scrolling, are they looking for people to show, is it work-life balance? Is it fitness? Is it spirituality? If you look at the feeds of Gen Z, they are filled with self-help, get rich. What should a spiritually healthy leader be communicating to that generation?
I think, first and foremost, they have to be real and genuine with them.
Which means what?
Which means being vulnerable, being honest, this is who I...
You're a mess too, or you've been helped?
Yeah. I mean, my book is filled with my mess.
Right.
Because I am a mess, and apart from the work of Christ in my heart, I wouldn't be here, I don't think. So I think they're looking for real, genuine, present people. And so as a leader, be who you are, be with them, and be present with them, as opposed to being distracted, which they are, right? They're often distracted. It's hard to have a conversation.
It's not a generational thing, right? It's older people and younger people that are both in the same room or at the same restaurant.
Yeah. Well, and interestingly, the older people are distracted, maybe not by screens, but by their own thoughts, by their own. Most people don't know how to be present with someone and stay with them and follow along.
Because it gets awkward.
It's awkward, or most people are thinking about, well, what am I going to say? As opposed to saying, tell me more about your experience. Oh, really? Can you tell me more about that? Help me understand that. So what was it like when you did that? See, when you enter into somebody's world like that, it's very unusual. And I think as a leader, or anybody, a mom, a dad, grandparents, to be able to do that is important.
That is such a helpful way, I think, to think about it, is what did it feel like? What did you do? What came after? What were the consequences? All that. Just a little hope, a little help for someone now to say, all right, I love what they're saying. I want to try being authentic with the Gen Z person in my life. I want to try to bridge that gap and not just say, do you want a beer, and sit and watch the game. Right.
I think it's hard sometimes for people just to be comfortable with who they are, right, for themselves. And so if it's something you didn't grow up with, being vulnerable, talking about your feelings, if you were taught to hide things, to not let people see your weaknesses or your flaws, it can be, I guess, scary to open up to someone who's younger. But what I found is that when you are able to just be real with people, like you said, agree 100%, just tell them and just listen to them, then they feel the freedom. And if you ask them to share an experience, then it's basically listening to them without trying to fix things, which can be hard for us to do sometimes. But
Michael, you get the final word. So any wisdom for all this conversation to close this down?
Well, I think it's a positive trend that we've talked about, this Gallup poll. I think that society will be healthier if people are using less alcohol, just especially when you consider the binge drinking and the alcoholism that can come from it. When you think about child abuse, typically, you find oftentimes my dad, when he got drunk, would beat us up, or the spouse who talks about those sorts of things. So there are pathologies with it, and so maybe this is a good trend.
Good trend, good news, and you were all very helpful. Thank you very much. Dave, we're going to hear from you in just a little bit. Well, thanks for our panel for joining us today. Coming up next on Morning Light, the powerful effect of healthy ministry leadership. It's important for ministry leaders to take time for themselves. Find out how Serving Leaders Ministries can help. You're watching Morning Light right here on Lighthouse TV.
Welcome back. Ministry leaders and their families sometimes need to step back and take care of their own needs. This is the mission of Serving Leaders Ministries, to provide care for people involved with ministry. Joining me is the founder, Dave Wiedis. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about this ministry.
Serving Leaders Ministries is a ministry that was created 18 years ago in order to come alongside ministry leaders. And what I mean by that is this: I saw the underbelly of ministry early on in my Christian life, and I saw ministry leaders fail and fall. And so the ministry is designed to come alongside pastors and provide pastors what pastors provide their congregations. So we provide counseling, we provide coaching, I do a lot of training, trying to help pastors and ministry leaders deal with the issues in their own heart. Ministry leaders are just like anybody else. They struggle with depression, anxiety, burnout, marital conflict, kids, the whole bit. So we come alongside pastors and ministry leaders because I ask the question, who cares for those who care? Who takes care of those who are sacrificially giving their lives? And so that's the mission of Serving Leaders.
Right, and that's true. So ministry leaders and their families are constantly giving and oftentimes not getting anything in return. So this break is so very much needed. So just walk us through the programs that you do offer.
Yeah, so for example, I do training and teaching where I'm focusing on the pastor's heart and trying to keep them in the game long term. I do a lot of mediation work. So as people know, that there are splits in churches, there are conflicts. Christians oftentimes are not real good at handling conflict. They tend to avoid conflict. They don't want to talk about the elephant in the room. And when there's an elephant in the room, there's a mess. and that mess often gets swept under the rug. There's lumpy carpets in our churches and in our pastors' lives, and so I help them try to address the conflict in a healthy way, in an honest way, by doing mediations, what I call relational mediations. We also do a lot of seminars, conflict avoidance, things like that.
So talk to us, how do you have a conversation with someone who you do have a conflict with?
Yeah. Number one, first decide to have the conversation, because we often avoid it. And we often settle for false peace as opposed to true peace. Secondly, I try to help people really learn to listen and have a respectful conversation in addition to an honest conversation. So what I do is I will take two parties who are in conflict, and I'll sit down with them separately, and I try to train them. How do you listen really carefully? Can you get the other person's perspective? They're not psychotic. They're not delusional. There's a reason for their feelings. Can you learn to listen and validate? Most of us don't know how to listen. Most of us are thinking about, what am I going to say in response to make my point, as opposed to saying, all right, so tell me what happened.
Right.
How did I offend you? Can I really understand that and get it?
That's right. How do you weave the gospel into all of this?
The gospel is embedded in everything that we're doing. We do something called incarnational listening. Just like Jesus left his world and entered our world as a sacrificial act, incarnational listening means you leave your world, you enter into your, quote, opponent's world, and say, okay, how can I be here? How can I get it? How can I understand? You don't have to agree, but you can understand and validate. And then try to come to a resolution. I call what I do in mediation marriage counseling between non-married people. Because I'm not trying to sit here as an attorney saying, you're right, you're wrong. I'm really trying to say, okay, what's the relational issue under the conflict? Because the conflict's the manifestation of a problem. So can you go to the heart? And I also try to encourage people to look at their own hearts. Most of us are saying, you did this, and really the question is, well, what was my part in this as well? And can we be humble enough to do that?
Absolutely. And what about advice for parents, for grandparents who have conflicts with their kids? It seems like the message is listen.
The message is listen, and try to understand as best you can. And so when you really are able to say, can you tell me more about your experience? Even if they were doing something wrong, can we get to the heart? Most of us are trying to manage behavior and not really understand issues of the heart. All behavior, as Jesus told us, arises out of the heart, right? Sinful behavior arises out of the heart. So we tend to try to manage behavior as opposed to the heart. And so can you start to understand what's going on in the heart of your child or your grandchild? Understand, listen. It doesn't mean that there's not room for discipline. That's appropriate in many cases. But really, do your kids feel like they can come to you with any issue and say, Dad, Mom, I have an issue. I have a problem. I've been at a party, I was drunk, or I'm struggling with pornography, I'm struggling with something like that. When you are able to create a climate, an environment in your family where they can feel free to come to you, I mean, you've won already.
Yeah, and that's really what you want, especially as parents, as grandparents.
Absolutely.
You want your kids to come to you. Dave, we do have much more that we want to talk to you about, so you're going to stick around for our next segment.
Sure.
Coming up next on Morning Light, we will learn about some upcoming events with Serving Leaders Ministries, and Dave will share some details about his newly released book. Stay with us. We are back in 1 minute. Welcome back. As we just heard, Serving Leaders Ministries comes alongside those who serve the body of Christ. Back with me is the founder of this ministry, Dave Wiedis. So you have some upcoming events in October and November that take place in Pennsylvania and also in New Jersey. Tell us about these gatherings.
We have a few different kind of gatherings. One is what we call ministry leader gatherings, and that's where we invite pastors, missionaries, anybody involved in ministry. And you don't have to be a formal pastor to come. And in those gatherings, what we do is we try to connect people and train them. So connection, meaning many pastors are in isolation, they're in silos, they don't get out very much with each other. So we try to connect them because they're isolated, and we don't want them to feel isolated. And number two, I try to focus on their hearts. So I don't do seminars on how do you grow your church. I do seminars on things like how do you avoid burnout? How do you avoid sexual misconduct? How do you avoid sinful conduct? How do you shepherd your own heart? So that's what we try to do. We try to shepherd their hearts.
And how do you see that these conferences make a difference for the leaders?
Yeah, many of them feel isolated. And when they see that other people are going through the same kinds of isolation, same kind of issues, many pastors are put up on a pedestal, and they don't feel like they have a safe place to talk to either each other or to other people. So we're moving in their lives, we're being available, we're letting them know about Serving Leaders Ministries and the services that we offer in terms of counseling and coaching. And so they feel connected, and the content of what we talk about is so important. Because, for example, if I'm talking about my book, How Do You Avoid Self-Sabotage? Everybody wants to know that, not just pastors, right? Everybody engages in some form of self-sabotage or sinful behavior. And so we don't have to be stuck by that. And so that's really the emphasis of this year. We'll be talking about how do you heal from past wounds that give rise to the commitments in our heart that create idols in our heart and can sabotage us.
You also have a fundraiser coming up, a celebration dinner.
We do. October 23rd in Newtown Square. And basically, it's a celebration dinner in which we talk about the victories and the things that God has done through the different counselors at Serving Leaders. We have about 30 counselors and ministries that are going on. So we talk about the victories that God has done. We celebrate. We also have, it's a fundraiser, so it's an important part of our ministry to raise the sufficient funds that we have to give away services and or to scholarship. So our counseling services for ministry leaders are scholarshiped, oftentimes, depending on need. And my wife actually does a live painting, which we auction off.
Oh,
and so
nice.
I could brag about her forever, but it's a great night.
Very nice. As you had mentioned about your new book,
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about the book?
Sure. The premise of the book is that you can measure your spiritual health by what you're most passionate about, what your ultimate commitments are. Most Christians, and certainly most pastors, would say, I'm most passionate about Jesus or the gospel. The truth is, if you peel back the layers of our heart and we see, what are you really most passionate about? Well, things like this. I will be loved. I will be admired. I'll never be embarrassed. I'll always be seen. I will impress you. These are commitments that I call ruling passions of the heart, that are meta motivations of the life that sort of govern our choices and inform our choices and what we do. And so if you don't know that that is what's governing your heart, it really actually becomes an idol of the heart. And we have choices. Either Jesus is Lord or my own idol is Lord. And so if my ruling passion is I'll never be lonely, that will lead me into certain behaviors that will be sinful and counterproductive and self-sabotaging. So I need to know, what are my ruling passions? How do I repent of them? What's a biblical response? And the beautiful thing is that we have a gracious, loving God that we can open our hearts to, and we can say, God, I struggle with this. My ruling passion is this. I want you to be my ruling passion.
How do you hope this book makes a difference for readers?
I think it will help people cultivate intimacy with Christ. And also, the most common response I get is, oh, that's why I struggle with this sin, or this is why I'm engaged in this behavior. I don't know why, but now I do. And so I've seen the light go on in people's eyes. Every time I've done the seminar and people are reporting after reading the book, I'm finding freedom because now I understand why I do what I do. So it goes after the motives of the heart and then helps people have a biblical response to that.
Dave, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
To learn more about this ministry or Dave's book, visit ServingLeadersMinistries.org. Stay with us. We're back right after the break. Welcome back. Coming up tomorrow on Morning Light, Greenlight operation is working to end human trafficking here in central Pennsylvania. Learn how the organization is helping survivors feel safe with a long-term residential program. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
Thank you, Debra. Well, for 138 years, opponents of a lottery in Pennsylvania defeated every effort to legalize it. William Penn opposed it at the very beginning, but years later, Ben Franklin would print lotto tickets to pay for his new fire company. By the 1830s, the Quakers finally convinced the legislature to ban lotteries, arguing they targeted the poor and the economically disadvantaged. On this day in history, August 26, 1971, opposition from religious opponents finally collapsed, and the Pennsylvania lottery was signed into law with a promise. That promise to reduce property taxes for seniors. And you've heard that before. Every few years when new gambling proposals arrive, it always seems the same. More money for kids, more money for schools, without the pain of high taxes. Of course, taxes haven't gone down, have they? And the gambling industry still wants a lot more. Protecting the poor is a clear mandate from Scripture, and it's our obligation to make sure that we stand up for the poor and the vulnerable. For Debra and the Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching today. Go check on your neighbors, and God willing, we'll be back here tomorrow morning.